Hey y'all, how's it going? It is time to talk about episode 3 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. I always feel like I say this, we're moving really fast, only because like literally the last episode came out less than a week ago, but hey, it's all good. I'm excited. I buckled down to watch it late last night, and now I'm here to talk about it with you all. And oh my gosh, okay, so I'm gonna share because I'm like half and half with this episode. I'm gonna be real with you. I will start with some little things that I did like, such as apparently Zach Braff voicing the mole rat alien, or whatever that, with the star nose. It's an animal and they converted it to a sentient alien. I also was surprised to hear that they brought back James Earl Jones, because as I was listening to the Vader voice, I was like, this could be either a really good voice actor, or they could be using one of those, high class like machines where you can just, make anybody speak at this point. So I was like, it would just be awesome if it really, really was James Earl Jones. And so I waited for the credits and it was him. So I was really excited about that. And I think there were just some other great comedic moments in this, such as the scene where they were boarding the mole rat alien's vehicle, and then all of a sudden the stormtroopers get on and it's kind of awkward, and they're like, we're looking for a Jedi, but don't worry, we'll find him. And it's like, he's right in front of you. So those were the good things I liked about this episode. But what I think put it in the middle for me was, and you're gonna find this weird, was the fact that we got Vader. And I think for me it was mostly like, we could have had Vader in this episode kind of, doing some things here and there, but I think the fact that he already came into contact with Obi-Wan Kenobi on episode 3, like halfway through the series, was kind of like, oh, so, we're here now. And like I said, I think it's perhaps the fact that we watched 3 episodes in the span of all of like 5 or 6 days. So I think that, if had they released these weekly, we would have saw episode 1 1 week, episode 2, and episode 3, would have been like 14-ish days from the beginning of the series to episode 3. So perhaps it would have felt, their meeting would have felt a little more earned, had we had that time to let it kind of build up to it. But I was essentially expecting them to kind of have a teaser, like in episode 5 perhaps, and then by episode 6 we would get this huge build up where finally Obi-Wan and Anakin / Vader could meet, and they could have their, rematch of the century, because that's what they had been billing this as. Like, oh, we're gonna have the rematch of the century between Vader and Obi-Wan, and, kind of ignore everything that happened in A New Hope, that, they definitely did see each other in between that time. And so, yeah, it just felt a little anticlimactic to me. I know. The only thing that I can think that will kind of maybe rectify it or make it better is, like, perhaps what they're trying to do is have a kind of midpoint battle. Because it just all seems so weird. Obi-Wan, great new name, Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan decided to run, he decided to flee the battle mostly instead of fight. And Vader was just kind of, moseying along, minding his own business, and this is, I think it just felt so unspectacular that I think they're setting up as like a mid kind of battle, just a little tease before they get into something bigger, because Obi-Wan wasn't on his game. Vader recognized that, and he was like, what, this is pathetic. I'm just gonna watch him flail around for a bit. So it's like, if you look at it from that perspective, like, this was just kind of a little taste, a little teaser, then I can understand. But I was like, there's no spectacle to this, it's no Mustafar. They're just in some kind of arid desert, nothing grand happening. And I was like, wow, you're really just, that was the other thing. I was like, he's really just gonna let Obi-Wan get away with this, after setting him on fire, and then the robot comes to rescue him, or the droid, and then he just kind of watches. I'm like, okay, there's something else to this, because as ruthless as Darth Vader is, why would he let Obi-Wan go so easily if he was so bent on getting him in the first place? All that to say, if we do end up getting 2 battle scenes by the end of this series, I do think, regardless of how cool that final battle will be. I think it does cheapen what we built up to in episode 4, New Hope, the actual films, which is like, again, to say they've met before, you just haven't seen it all. And so definitely does give it a bit of a different weight, kind of retconning things and saying, oh, but actually, so I don't know, I might have a different point of view by the time this whole series is said and done, but I'm like, I don't know about this one, guys. All that aside, I do have to admit that I was super excited to see Vader back in this episode. I think they did a really good job of his characterization, making him seem menacing, making him seem, basically as scary as we remember, right? And it was nice to see, I don't know how to put it, but Vader in his full capacity. We've kind of like post the original trilogy, even maybe like post episode 3, as far as real life timeline, we've been kind of like, Vader is this elusive villain and he's so high and mighty on his throne, and we can only like mention him or only whisper about him. But kind of like in Rogue One, he was like just a little tease. He wasn't the main attraction, he was just a tease. And then this showed you, it was like, okay, yeah, Vader can still do some field work. He's still a field agent. He has to, get his hands dirty every now and then. So it was nice to see him, doing what he does and not just kind of being as elusive as he usually is, like, oh, we're only FaceTiming Lord Vader, we'll never get to see him. And he's like, no, he does a lot of stuff. And I think the village scene, that was really, really savage of him. And even with his battle with Obi-Wan in this episode, setting the ground ablaze and then just friggin' tossing Obi-Wan into it, I was like, oh my god. that was really rough. And oh my god, it was a heartbreaking parallel to have that pain reciprocated, if that's the best word to say. So I was like, oh my god, yeah, he is not the person who we remember him to be. He's not the little Annie, who was pod racing. This is straight up Vader. So I think that's also kind of a strength of this series as a whole, I'd say, is that we're seeing these events played out through Obi-Wan Kenobi's eyes, and it really, to me, helps to bridge the prequels, as I might have been saying before, to the original trilogy. And kind of, sometimes it feels like, yeah, we did get this scene where Anakin all of a sudden is transformed into Darth Vader in episode 3, but it still kind of seems like a stark contrast between Anakin Skywalker and Vader. I love how I say his name, by the way. I just stress that Anakin. I don't know why. Every time I hear it back, I'm like, why do I say it like that? But anyway, and what I think really ties this whole thing together is the fact that we also have Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi versus having Alec Guinness. Like, seeing Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan Kenobi fight Darth Vader, it just kind of feels a little disconnected from the prequels in a way, just like slightly in a way, versus seeing Ewan McGregor fight against Vader. And Ewan McGregor really ties it to the prequels. It ties that whole brotherhood that Obi-Wan and Anakin had, and now seeing it through his perspective, it's like, oh crap, they went through the Clone Wars together, that was his Padawan, they went through all this stuff. And I think Ewan really sells it as well, just because he is such a great actor, and he, it just really shows on his face, especially when Vader was coming through the village, wreaking havoc, and he again just has a look of pure shock and dismay. I was like, I have to give it up to this man. He is really, someone said, 17 years later, he's just flawlessly stepped back into this role, and I completely agree. Ewan has been killing it. And overall, this series has just been doing a good job of helping us to empathize with Obi-Wan Kenobi, and seeing again, he's really emotionally affected by his entire past. Still 10 years later, he was in the middle of the desert, and all of a sudden he sees a vision of Anakin and his cloak, and I was like, who is that? You kind of had to zoom in. That was definitely Anakin, Hayden Christensen. So he's having flashbacks of those times, and then he is reminiscing about what it was like, you know, when he was super, super young, before he was even taken into the Jedi Academy, right? He had a brother, he had a father, he had a mother, and it's like, well, yeah, naturally, but you know, who they don't really talk about this stuff. So that was interesting. And even as well, him just feeling kind of saddened, you know, using that little fake story when he was trying to conceal Leia's identity and being like, you know, she reminds me of her mother, and you know, clearly he's still definitely hung up about Padme as well. So it is just really emotional, and gosh, it's hard to take, you know. So I'd have to say there are some really good components to this episode. We got Indira Varma as well. I think that's from Game of Thrones. Her character is Tala, I believe that's how you pronounce her name. And you know, we got the introduction of her character being someone who had worked for the Empire, it sounded like, but she, as soon as she realized what was going on, she grew discontent. So now she's kind of like a spy, or you know, they've they've set up like an underground railroad for the Jedi and people fleeing the Empire. So I mean, hey, that's pretty clever. I mean, why wouldn't you? And I just want to win some brownie points here. Seeing her character on the set in some of the leaks, I was like, I just have a feeling that she's in an Empire costume or uniform, but I had a feeling she was going to be helping out Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I was 100% correct, guys. So give me some claps in the chat. No. But you know, I'm interested to see how they use her coming up in the next couple of episodes, but ultimately, I'm just hoping, I don't know, I just hope we don't get stuck in this running away loop. I mean, there's only 6 episodes. You really have to use that time preciously. And I think the fact that Leia was kidnapped again, now she's like legit, supposedly, you know, held for ransom by Reva. It's like, all right, so are we gonna have a repeat essentially of episodes 1 and 2 for episode 4? Like, how do we break this cycle? I think The Mandalorian is kind of a good roadmap for this, because, you know, Mando had Grogu, and he was at first going to deliver Grogu to the client who was kind of working for the shadow of the Empire, and then they were kind of outrunning Moff Gideon. But eventually they broke away. They were like, okay, we gotta do something new. You know, we're gonna introduce the plot about getting him to the Jedi, or we're gonna introduce the plot about, you know, reclaiming Mandalore. So I know we don't have the same amount of time to play as they do in The Mandalorian. So I'm just like, all right, let's switch it up a bit, please, for episode 4 and 5 and 6. So I think in the end, I'm still hooked no matter what. I think it is outpacing the Book of Boba Fett, even though the Book of Boba Fett was their episodes 4, 5, and 6 were, you know, they completely made a brand new series, and they were like, we're just gonna make The Mandalorian 2.5. So I don't think there's any space for Obi-Wan Kenobi to do something like that in the middle of the series. But I mean, hey, as long as they keep delivering more emotional Obi-Wan moments, and, you know, more him reflecting on Vader, and more Vader being ruthless, and, you know, as well revealing whatever the heck was going on with Reva and Obi-Wan, that should be hopefully interesting as well, if they can execute it right. So my fingers are crossed. So guys, I am going to leave it there. Be sure to let me know in the comments what your favorite moment from episode 3 was. Episode 3 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Next week, this is fun, I will be reviewing Ms. Marvel. It comes out June 8th, so these reviews are going to kind of be stacked. I don't know how I'm going to handle that, but I'll figure it out. It's going to be fun. We're going to have some fun talking about that. And as well, I made a video just recently about some drama happening in Star Wars. I felt that I had to address it in relation to Moses Ingram and some hate that she had been receiving, akin to a lot of stars in Star Wars recently. So if you want to check that out, I have that linked here. Otherwise, guys, be sure to like and subscribe for more, because we will be back next week with episode 4's review. See you next video. Bye.